But total meltdown in the UK. Here's what is this? Pod Save America. This is like their attack on. This was a huge F up by hegseth. There's no walking back his initial comments that Ukraine won't join NATO or gain back all the territory lost since 2014. He wrote Putin a big check that has already been cashed. Maybe don't make unqualified Fox News host sec deaf. This is like the idea that he was actually walking back his comments. This is not true.
Yeah, that's the new cope, is to say that Pete Hegseth has walked back his comments. He didn't walk anything back. And Trump has basically repeated, in fact, doubled down on what Pete Hegseth said. He's basically said Ukraine should never have gotten into the war, and that NATO offering Ukraine membership is a major cause of the war. So I don't see Trump walking that back at all.
Yeah.
You mentioned Mark Milley earlier, and Mark Milley helping preside over the failed counteroffensive. Well, Mark Milley saw that coming, and that's why before the counteroffensive in the fall of 2022, he called for negotiations with Russia. He said, now's the time for Ukraine to negotiate. This was right after Ukraine had made some surprise gains in 2 provinces, taken them back. And Mark Milley said, basically, this is the best Ukraine's going to do. Time to consolidate these gains at the negotiating table. But he was drowned out by Jake Sullivan, Antony Blinken, and people like this guy. Progressive proxy warrior. Oh, no, sorry. This isn't the right one. Let me find the here it is. Progressive proxy warrior, Matt Duss, who was one of the people to, shame progressive members of Congress when they briefly sent a letter to Biden calling for diplomacy.
His role was to, Matt Duss didn't play, his role was to discipline the progressive left and prevent any voice on the progressive left from rising to the fore in favor of negotiations. He was Bernie Sanders' foreign policy brain, if you can call him that.
So listen to him now. Another example of a rat fleeing the sinking ship. He says, no Ukraine in NATO was a pretty clear subtext of the pre-February 24, 2002 diplomacy by Macron and Schultz, backed by Biden. Hegseth is just making it text. There's a lot of stuff to be mad about, but this isn't it. So now Matt Duss is saying that actually Ukraine was never going to join NATO, and that Biden even endorsed that goal back in February 2022. So the reason why he's doing this is because he's been at the forefront of, as you said, Max, trying to police the left into going along with Biden. So now he wants to make it look as if Biden had the same sensible position of no Ukraine and NATO all along. Okay. So he's completely not only backing off his own position, which is attacking people advocating diplomacy with Russia and taking NATO off the table, but he's whitewashing Biden's stance as well. So he says that Biden backed calls for Ukraine to not join NATO back in pre-February 24, 2022. This is what was actually happening. This is a headline from The Guardian from January 2022. U.S. holds firm on Ukraine's right to join NATO. Okay. And this is what Antony Blinken said. We will uphold the principle of NATO's open door, Blinken said. There is no change. There will be no change. So Matt Duss, because instead of being a progressive, instead of backing up people at the Progressive Caucus who briefly called for diplomacy, he was doing the bidding of the Biden administration. He was doing the bidding of the Biden administration, and now he wants to pretend to whitewash Biden's record, who he's dutifully served, that Biden was against NATO membership for Ukraine all along, when they risked and actually provoked a war over it.
This is Keir Starmer, by the way, who's basically, I mean, his team sent staff and Labor Party apparatchiks to campaign for Biden's reelection. This is Starmer today. Starmer reiterates UK's support for Ukraine's NATO membership following US dismissal. I mean, this language was always being put out there. And it's laughable that Mark Rutte would claim it wasn't. What this is like in the Kyiv Independent, which I think was a USAID-funded publication, supposedly in Ukraine. So there's a tacit acknowledgement, though, by Duss and Mark Rutte and others that NATO membership from Ukraine was the source of the conflict. I mean, this isn't about Putin trying to reestablish the USSR. It's about preventing a hostile military alliance on its doorstep in a country controlled by outside powers. Pretty simple.
Which therefore undermines the claims they've made all along, which is that Putin is indeed trying to restore the Soviet empire and he's an imperialist, and this is all about Russian imperialism, and we have to fight that by funneling tens of billions of dollars into Ukraine. Of course, they're walking that back now because the writing's on the wall. On the point about the UK being outraged, their problem is, why would Trump listen to them? Given the record, and this is where Russiagate ties in. UK intelligence played a major role in Russiagate. It wasn't just Christopher Steele. During the summer of 2016, UK intelligence officials were sending warnings over and meeting with John Brennan to warn about Trump's fictional ties to Russia. So they played a major part in trying to frame Trump as a Russian agent. And then there are Ukrainians as well, including an official in Zelensky's cabinet who took part in trying to frame Trump as a Russian agent back then too, who leaked that fake ledger about Paul Manafort. That came from some of the very same Ukrainian officials who are now serving under Zelensky. We also learned recently from the New York Times that Ukrainian intelligence officials helped provide information that the U.S. used to accuse Russia of hacking the DNC, which, of course, as we know now from all the available evidence, was a scam. So both the UK and Ukraine's fingerprints are all over a scam that framed Trump as a Russian agent, which therefore, I mean, on top of the fact that they're already proxies of the U.S. and they, have second-rate status, and that makes them all the less important for Trump to listen to. And in fact, it gives them a motivation to ignore because they took part in the Russiagate scam.
And a lot of those psyops and deceptions were deployed by quote unquote independent media outlets in Ukraine and across Eastern Europe that were then disseminated into the American public's media news stream through Western media. And who was sponsoring all of those so-called independent media outlets? It was USAID, which really highlights one reason why Trump is targeting USAID so aggressively. It's revenge. It's revenge for this campaign to actually delegitimize his presidency, impeach him, and paint him as a treasonous figure, of someone who actually committed the highest crime possible by colluding with Russia. It's, even as someone who doesn't like Trump, it's pretty disturbing how much money, we're talking about billions of dollars, went into creating that media ecosystem, that regime change media ecosystem that has attacked us as well.
Oh yeah.
Lee Fong has a piece out about how USAID funded Zinc Network, which is a British intelligence cutout, attacked me as a disinformation operative who was spinning Kremlin disinformation, basically because I've been saying what we're saying right now about the Ukraine proxy war and where it was going. So that's where my taxes go. It goes to attempts to get me deplatformed. But for Trump, it was just on a massive scale.
Yeah.
It's the real, sorry to keep
no.
in. This is the real foreign meddling scandal. This is the real election meddling scandal, not what Russia did. And the Ukrainian embassy was hosting Clinton officials in 2016.
Yeah. At the top, I think, is always AIPAC and their foreign meddling U.S. elections. But a close second, certainly framing a president as a Russian agent, that is unprecedented. And Ukraine did take part in it. And this is Trump, I think, in part getting his revenge, although I don't think that's the only motivation here. And also, by the way, since we're talking about the UK freaking out, they're also freaking out that Tulsi Gabbard has just been confirmed and sworn in as the U.S. top intelligence chief, the director of national intelligence. There was articles in UK media about how intelligence officials in the UK are freaking out. And what's their reason? What's their main reason for freaking out? It's obvious. I don't think it's Tulsi Gabbard's heterodox views on the Ukraine proxy war. It's Syria, where the UK was a major junior partner of the US in the dirty war, had a hand in the deceptions around chemical weapons allegations, which Tulsi Gabbard challenged and thankfully hasn't sold out on other issues. And of course, they're alarmed that she's now the top US intelligence official overseeing US intelligence officials. That's a very scary prospect for people that have been lying to the public for a long time about stories that Tulsi Gabbard has called out.